Sometimes your functions may return an array. So in this lecture, I'm going to give you some guidelines about testing these arrays. The function we're going to test in this lecture is getCurrencies, which simply returns an array of 3 strings. So back in our test file, let's add another describe block for getCurrencies. And here's the body of our block. How many tests do we need? Again, here we have one execution path. So one test is sufficient. So it should return supported currencies. Okay, so here we call lib.getCurrencies, get the result, and then make our assertion. So in the last lecture, I told you that your tests should neither be too general nor too specific. So let's explore this principle in the context of arrays. So here are some general ways to test this function. We can expect the result to be defined. This is too general. It doesn't give us any value. So if I go back to this function and create a bug by simply returning a number, that test will still pass, but we won't have the list of supported currencies that we want to show somewhere in our application. So that's why this is bad. Another general way of testing this function is like this. So we can expect the result not to be null. Again, the same principle. This test is useless. Now let's take a look at an example of an assertion that is too specific. So, too specific. We can expect result, the first element in this array, to be US dollars, and the second element to be Australian dollars, and the third one to be euro. What is the problem with this approach? The problem is that we're testing the exact location of these elements in the array. If tomorrow we decide to change our sorting algorithm and sort these currencies in a different way, this test is going to break. So when testing arrays, don't look for the exact location of an element in that array. Now let me show you another assertion that is too specific. Instead of these 3 assertions, we might have an assertion like this. Expect that result, the length, to be 3. So here we expect to get an array with 3 elements. Again, this is too specific because if in the future we add a new currency, this test is going to break. So what's the proper way to test this function? Let me show you. So proper way. The proper way to test this function is to check for the existence of an element in this array, irrespective of its location. So we can expect result to contain US dollars. We don't care if it's at the beginning or the end of the array. As long as we have US dollars, we're happy because we know this is a supported currency. We also add another assertion for Australian dollars and one for euro. However, this is not the ideal way, and I'm going to show you the ideal way in a second. So before we get there, let's just run this test. So back in our lib.js, let's bring this array back. Now, back in the terminal, npm test. Okay, all tests are passing, beautiful. So back in our test, there is a cleaner way to test this function. So instead of these 3 assertions, we can have one assertion and compare the result of this function with an array that includes these elements. Let me show you. So, ideal way. We expect result to equal, now here we call expect dot array containing. This method takes an array. In this array, we can add the supported currencies, and they can be in any order. So we can add euro, US dollars, and Australian dollars. As long as this result that we get here includes these values, this test will pass. So let's run this one more time. npm test, all tests passing, excellent. Now, if you forget the syntax, you can always go back to the documentation. So head over to facebook.github.io/jest. You go to API, and here in the API reference, you can see expect. So these are all the matcher functions that are available. The one that we used in this lecture is array containing. In the next lecture, you're going to learn how to test objects.